Hello, everyone. Hello. Welcome back to another episode of the Relationship Atlas podcast. I'm your host. My name is Atlas, and this is the Relationship Atlas podcast, where my goal is to help you navigate the terrain of your relationships, similar to how an atlas to the world helps you navigate the terrain of the world. And today, what we're going to focus on is the other attachment style, which is the avoidant attachment style. So we've talked about the anxious in a previous episode. Today, we're going to talk about avoidant. And in the following episode, we're going to talk about secure. And we're also going to get into what's called ambivalent or fearful avoidant, which is a bit of a mix between anxious and avoidant. And the goal with these conversations around attachment styles is to help you better understand your behaviors, maybe be able to name it, to tame it, right? And in order to evolve through something, often that starts with being able to simply name what's alive for us, not to label ourselves, but to simply acknowledge and recognize a part of us that we may have suppressed or ignored or haven't been open to facing yet. So, in today's podcast, similar to the previous one about anxious attachment style, we are going to go through what avoidant attachment is. We're going to talk about how it's formed, so where this comes from in the first place. We're going to talk about some of their views that they have on specific relational things like intimacy, sex, conflict, and possibly what they expect from their partner. And we're going to get into more detail around what avoidant attachment can look like in a relationship dynamic, what it sounds like to the person who is avoidantly attached, and then get into some solutions around how to start making the shift from this insecure attachment style called avoidant into a more secure dynamic. So, an avoidant attachment style is simply a form of behavior. I said this in the last episode and I'm saying it here again. We're just getting clarity on our behaviors and being offered an idea or a system that may be at play so that we can start to initiate a different system. So, an avoidant attachment is a form of insecure attachment. It is a deactivating strategy. So, in contrast to an anxious attachment, which is an activating strategy, a an avoidant attachment style is a deactivating strategy, which I'll describe in more detail as we go, but it's essentially a way of protecting oneself from intimacy or closeness. A avoidant attachment, for those that have experience with it, whether that's you and you understand that previously to this conversation, or you may label somebody in your life currently that is avoiding or maybe avoidant, it can seem as if that person is not in distress when studies done on the anxious attachment and avoidant attachment show that somebody who is avoidant is just as much at a point of distress or dis-ease as somebody who is anxious. And I found that one really interesting because, again, it does seem as if there is a shutdown, there isn't a feeling, there isn't a lot of activity happening in their mind or their emotion, when in truth, they are actually just as activated. And what they lend themselves to is deactivating that experience. They want to shut that off. Another way to look at an avoidant attachment, and this one may be difficult to swallow, is a one-up strategy. So in a relationship, what we often find is a power dynamic. And an anxiously attached person often takes the role of one down. They tend to be overly ambitious and trying to get the attention of somebody. They tend to grovel. They tend to beg. They tend to fight aggressively to get love, connection, closeness from another person, which says they don't have it, which automatically puts them at a one down or one below position. What also tends to happen is an anxious person finds an avoidant. The two tend to match what it is that they are used to searching for or what is quote unquote normal for them in relationship dynamic. So an anxious will find an avoidant And what the avoidant will do is take the one up stance, which is things like, I don't have needs, you're super needy. If this was a different person, it wouldn't be like this. They take a stance of one up. And this can be really difficult for a an avoidant, but also an anxious or even a secure to feel close to this person, right? Because we can't love from above or below. Now let's move into how an avoidant attachment is created. So they did a study done just for reference called The Strange Situation. And it was designed to help us understand what kind of attachment we had as children to our parents in a bit of a strange environment. So, a mother would bring their child into a brand new space they've never been in before. It had toys and it was generally comfortable, but it was something new to them. It was a strange environment. In that environment, they would play with their children for a couple minutes, and then the mother would be prompted to leave the room. When the mother would leave the room, that's when we start to watch the response of the child. So, for a secure attachment, a child will get visibly upset that the parent has left. And then when the parent returns after a short amount of time, not long, it's just meant to challenge the child will be upset still, will want attention. When that child receives the love and care from their parent, they are actually quite quick to feel settled and regrounded and able to then operate in the room again. That's an example of a secure attachment in a child. In anxious, as we talked about in the previous episode, a child will be visibly upset when their parent leaves the room. And when the parent returns, they will be very difficult to settle down again. They likely won't start to re-engage with the room. They won't care about toys. Even when they're offered a toy, they likely may swat it away or ignore it completely. And they are still visibly upset. They may continue crying. They may get angry. They may, again, protest to maintain connection. An avoidant is slightly different in a couple of ways. One, they may not actually show distress when the parent leaves the room. They may actually notice, but not feel upset or bothered or express outwardly that they're bothered by this absence. Now, again, studies show that they are quite distressed internally, but what they've done is they've turned that off. And what they will likely do is continue to engage with the room. They will act as if they are unbothered. When the parent comes back, it will again still be something very similar. There won't be a reach for love or a reach for connection. There may be some interplay where they're showing them a toy or they're, saying, "Hey, look at this with me." But otherwise, they're still continuing to be, for lack of better language, an independent child, right? So they're not attached to the closeness or connection or the loving bond. They are quite disconnected from it. So that's the strange situation test. And that helped us understand how we as adults now attach to our partner. Because there's a transference that happens over time where we transfer our safe haven from our parental figure or our caregiver to our intimate partner as an adult. We transfer that attachment style over to that. And so that's where it can become really difficult because we're not each other's parent, right? So we start to create some challenge in that environment. So how is an avoidant specifically is formed? How does an avoidant show up in that room in the strange situation test and not care if mom leaves really too much, or at least show that there's care, or not really care that they come back? How is this formed? So I'll go through the list briefly, and I'll encourage you to just simply acknowledge, reflect, or raise your hand to yourself of, "Yep, me too," or "Yep, that sounds right," or what have you. But this isn't also a place where we go to start blaming the way we were parented. We're just simply acknowledging the impact of our environment and how that is showing up currently today. So caregiver may be emotionally unavailable or emotionally inconsistent or emotionally dismissive of your needs as a child. A great question to reflect on this is, how was my vulnerability responded to growing up? The parent may have been dismissive of your feelings, They may have constantly told you to be quiet, dismiss your feelings, ignore it. It's not that important. They may have been told to act your age or behave in ways that are beyond your age to prompt more independence. This is a bit of a controversial one, but self-soothing, forcing the child to self-soothe, can create that avoidant attachment system. This became popular over the last couple of years, where we started to prompt a parenting style where we would get the child to cry it out in bed. So child would visibly be upset, visibly crying, and the child would then just be prompted to cry it out. There wouldn't be attention, there wouldn't be love, there wouldn't be closeness received, and eventually they'd go to sleep. The same thing would go if they were just generally crying or visibly upset. They would be prompted to handle it, to deal with it themselves. And this was the idea of, hey, if they can figure out how to soothe through these experiences, then they got it. The attachment theory is very contradicting to this because it promotes the reality that they do actually require the knowing that their safe haven is available. And that is what actually helps them feel more secure and independent to go take on the world and allow them to remain relational. So the crying out or the self-soothing practices can also influence towards the avoidant attachment style. And then lastly, and this one was important for me, is the toughen up dynamic, right? Just tough it out. Just stop crying. You don't need to feel these feelings, right? Avoidant of this person's needs. So you can sense the direct correlation, right? When our needs were avoided or were not met very clearly, then therefore we would need to find a different solution. Now, one that really stood out to me just before we move on to the avoidance views is the child's emotional expression may have been seen or experienced or responded to in more negative ways than if they were to not have expressed their needs or emotions. Meaning, if I were to cry, the response I get would be worse than if I didn't cry. So I may have been able to hold the peace. I may have been able to stay at base level if I were to just be quiet, if I were to just not have needs, if I were to just be independent. Versus when I would have shared at one point or I would have expressed myself, how they responded to that is worse than if I didn't. So again, it's just some influences that may have contributed to the ways in which we operate today. No guilt, no blame, no shame, no right, wrong, no good, bad. Just simply reality. Reality that a parent cannot meet all of our needs. And so how they go about trying to do that influences and impacts how we operate today in our adult relationships. Avoidants have very unique perspectives towards relational dynamics or relational traits. So we're just going to go through a couple of those right now to help us better understand the avoidant attachment. Now, as you go through this podcast, I encourage you to self-reflect to first see if this is possibly the way that you operate in relationship. But if it's not, it's also a way for you to better understand your partner if they fall in this category. Better understanding ourselves and our partner helps us connect quickly and more effectively to empathy, which then allows us to relate better to them. If we don't have empathy based on our lack of understanding, then it's really difficult to relate and it's really difficult to get or find deep repair in any sort of conflicting matter. So the hope with either of these episodes, anxious or avoidant, is that it just simply helps bring a deeper understanding so that then we can operate in a different way and change the way we're currently dancing with our partner so that we have more security, more safety, more stability, and more long-term success. So an avoidant, when it comes to intimacy, how does an avoidant view intimacy? The immediate response is loss of independence, whether that's closeness, deep connection, vulnerability, or togetherness, it's automatically experienced as a loss of independence. Another aspect of relational dynamics, which is conflict. How does an avoidant view or deal with conflict? They have a tendency to withdraw. They can come across as empty, self righteous, and they can feel suffocated. Nature, conflict, often by nature, is actually something that leads to connection. It can feel like it's distancing, but it is often a way to bring the two of you closer because you're only forced to engage with each other, to be in this together, to talk about things together. And so a avoidant likely will withdraw or stonewall or shut down because they don't want the connection from this conversation. An avoidance attitude towards sex is sex can be seen as meaningless from the contrast of an anxious who may see sex as meaningful. It is a bond creation, it is a bond connector, whereas a avoidant may see it simply as a to-do or a form of release rather than an opportunity to connect deeper. They may also view sex as a way of proving their worth through performance. So it might sound like if I'm good at this, I'm safe. When sex is complete, they may actually seek out emotional distance. They may step out, step away emotionally, physically. They may not want to maintain closeness. Cuddling after her is very unlikely. And slow sex may also be too intimate. It may be more forceful, more, again, performance based. And then they also, on contrast, may actually use sexual distance as a way of remaining autonomous, remaining in their sense of self. Sex in and of itself may be too much bonding, too much togetherness, too much closeness, and maybe too much vulnerability. And all of that can be determined based on their level of avoidantly attached operations, whatever that meant. It is, I like to see it as a spectrum, and that's where I lost my words there, is that a lot of us, if or all of us, are on the spectrum of attachment styles. So we are not one or the other. It's not black and white. It's all a continuum. And so you just imagine a really long line, and somewhere on there is secure, somewhere on there there's anxious, and somewhere there's on avoidant. And we're all on our own point on the line. And so some of these things may be all of you, or maybe all of this sounds like you, but some of them, like sex, are contradicting. And so it just depends on where you're at. And more specifically, which we're going to continue to get to, is your capacity for closeness. How much capacity have you developed for closeness over time since this attachment style was formed? How close can you be? And that determines a lot of these things. What does an avoidant expect from their partner? Now, just like the anxious, a lot of these, if not all of them, are going to be unspoken expectations. They're not going to be something that are clearly communicated. If they were, we would be unlikely to be having this conversation around why are we having difficulty in our relationship? Why do I not understand you? Because we'd be communicating. But a lot of what we experience in the attachment style blocks the ability to communicate effectively. Again, that capacity, that development. So what does an avoidant expect from their partner? Well, they expect closeness, ironically, just not too much. Be close, don't go anywhere, but just don't come too close. Be available, but don't be demanding. Respect my space and respect my alone time. Don't get in the way of things like my self-reliance. It can get tricky on this next one. I want you to be able to regulate your own emotions. I don't know why they would be my responsibility. They would like non-reactive emotional stability, no drama, right? A very common one in this is be my peace. Phrases like, why can't things just be easy? Why do they always have to be talked about? These are just some examples of how the avoidant uncommunicatively requests, or expects things from their partner. Now, again, it's going to sound like, what's wrong with you? Why are you like this? I don't understand why you need to be this way. It's not normal. A lot of attachment can start to breed some shame. And my hope right now is to squash that, just absolutely eradicate it. None of this holds meaning. It is simply a form of attachment. It's a system that we're operating on based on our current capacity and our current development. Over time, we can now develop our capacity, develop new skills, develop something different, develop new behaviors to be able to operate differently. But up until this point, we are simply doing our best with what we've always known. Once we become aware, which I mentioned at the beginning, once we start naming it, to tame it, then that opens the door for us to start evolving through it. So none of these are good, bad, right, or wrong. They may just not be productive for a secure, stable, successful long-term relationship. They're not effective forms of getting there. So if that's what we want, which I believe all of us do, great. Now we have a starting point. Now we have a starting base to begin. Now let's look at what avoidant attachment style looks like in relationship. So I'm going to rattle through this list. It can be a little long, so I want to give some space for our solutions at the end and keep us on the right time for this episode here. So what does it look like? Well, it looks like the tendency to distance, right? We're catching that. It can look like constantly finding faults in their partner, again, to create distance and prevent closeness. It also allows them to shy away from their own faults, right? Because when they tend to have a difficulty connecting to others or being intimate with others, there is a high likelihood that they also have a difficulty connecting and being intimate with themselves. They may initiate fights to set back progress or prevent more closeness. They may have a difficulty saying, I love you, or being genuinely endearing, genuinely cherishing their partner. If it gets too close, they might leave, right? If there's a demand for intimacy consistently enough over time and they are unclear on how to develop that part of them, they may seek out a non-intimate experience like an affair. And they may also leave the relationship and jump into another one quickly because they do have a craving for closeness, just not too much. So they may find something that feels or is experienced as quote unquote less demanding. That doesn't mean you're being demanding, although there's maybe some truth to it. It simply means this one is too demanding for my current development and my capacity. I don't know how to handle this and I don't have solutions. I'm going to go and find one that I can feel more comfortable in my system with, that doesn't activate me in these ways. They may have a difficulty trusting others completely, right? That one's a common one for avoidant. If they fully trust, that means they're pretty connected, pretty intimate. They definitely have a difficulty depending on others, right? They believe in independence, not interdependence. They may actually abolish the idea of having needs or depending on somebody else to meet them. Stress tends to create the desire for more closeness versus the anxious, where stress tends to want to create more closeness. Stress for the avoidant tends to create more distance. Pulling away after deeply intimate experiences. So it could be a really connected date night, deeply intimate sex, vulnerable and honest conversation. It's really connecting. They may go quiet. They may, if you're still in the early stages, go ghost. They may pull out completely. And then when they feel settled again, come back for that closeness. Because again, what they hope from a partner is closeness, but not too much. They may form relationships with people who are unavailable. So maybe they're already in a relationship, they're already married, or they're just far away, right? Long distance relationing can be a part of the avoidant attachment. Not always, but it can be because it allows for you to stay as independent as possible while getting just enough closeness that you're satiated enough. And then another one here is the possibility of just seeing only the negative in your partner and ignoring the positive, right? Again, because we're trying to get close enough, but not too close. What does it sound like for an avoidant? What are some of the phrases or the words just before we get to the solutions? And I like this one because it just helps us better understand, okay, is this me? And also, have I heard these before? In an attempt to better understand the person we're interested in or the person we're in a partnership with or we're married to. So it sounds like I'm not ready to commit. Right. Now, that isn't necessarily automatically avoidant. That may actually just simply be that they are not ready. It doesn't mean they have an avoidant attachment style. However, it is very common for somebody who has an avoidant attachment style to either say or be in the thinking of I'm not ready to commit. The differentiator is somebody who is securely aware that they're not ready to commit right now will either pull out of the relationship completely or take steps and figure out a plan to get ready and be ready to commit. Versus an avoidant may say, I'm not ready to commit, but then may stay together and be quiet about that commitment or be quiet about the next steps or marriage for long periods of time. They may just go with the motions and go with the flow without ever actually standing true or tall in the commitment. They may have a difficulty saying, I love you, right? But they do have feelings for you. That's something that they may say. I'm better off on my own is a common one for avoidance. Again, because they value independence over interdependence or any sort of other dependence. When I was with this person, it was a lot different. Or when I was with this person, it would be better. Or it was better, right? Again, there's this idea of some sort of, they call it the phantom X, where it could be the actual X or somebody else they have in their mind that would not be like this. And that's not an attack on you. And that's not a form of shaming or guilting you. It's their way of protecting themselves from closeness, connection, and intimacy. That's all their system cares about. That's what they believe they will be the safest in. And so this demand for intimacy and closeness is very unsafe for their system, for their current level of development. They really are out to get me, maybe something that they say. They are so needy. It's pathetic. Maybe another form of language they use. I need to get out of here. Right. If they were the one, this wouldn't be happening. All of these can sound very difficult because they're pretty cutthroat statements, truthfully. And at the same time, they are the current form of language this person has in dealing with what they're currently facing. So when they say things like, I need to get out of here, what they're requesting underneath is a need for space. But they don't know how to communicate it quite yet. They don't have the capacity to hold that tension and still talk. And they don't know how to stay completely in this conversation because it creates too much closeness. It's too much for their system. So they internally explode and they deactivate the hell out of it. Versus a anxious person internally explodes and outwardly protests it. Right? Very different behaviors. So hopefully by now you've gotten a pretty clear idea of the avoidance system. I'll return to the conversation just around the fact that an avoidance system is simply a system. It is a form of behavior. It is a style of executing anything and everything for what our system is currently developed to hold as safe. If it triggers part of our capacity or our development as unsafe, then we will start to lend ourselves into these behaviors or lend ourselves into these systems to return to safety. So everything is about safety. There is no other value here, right? So what we do then in moving to secure attachment is we start to connect the dots towards different systems, different forms of behavior, and a new approach to development. So I have a couple different solutions here to offer to be able to start the game, start the journey towards secure attachment. So the first one we've talked about today is simply naming it to taming it, owning the fact that I have this system in place based on my experiences growing up. So an example could be, I notice I want to avoid this right now. I need 5 minutes to myself, right? I notice I want to avoid, naming the avoidance. Another way could be, hey, I'm noticing that my system of avoidance right now is activated. I think I need to go take 5 minutes. These are just simple acknowledgments for what is alive in us, and it allows us to better connect to a possible solution. Now, what this also allows us to do is when we name it, there is often an experience where it is more tamed, meaning it's more settled. A lot of these systems are hidden in the dark. They're hidden in some sort of mental prison or emotional prison, not ever faced, not addressed, not looked at. So once we bring it to the surface and acknowledge it, once we shine the flashlight on that dark corner and we say, hey, I see you, that part says, oh, I really didn't think you saw me there. Well, this is awkward. And what it does is it often dissolves a lot of the intensity. That's what the power of naming it can do. Now, that doesn't resolve the grander challenges, but what it does allow us to do is connect to what's called the wise adult, which is how Terry Real forms it, the wise adult, where we can start to make a better informed and a more productive decision here. So it can lead to allowing us to say things like, this is hard for me to stay in, but I want to stay connected. Because as an adult, we know that's what we want. But the child version, the inner child version of us doesn't know that yet because it has interpreted it as always unsafe. So this is hard for me, but I want to be here. This is hard for me, and I want to stay connected. I feel the urge to pull away, but I want to stay connected. I'm going to stay. Right? Just something to name, to tame, and as we do that, we allow ourselves the opportunity to evolve through it. Another opportunity for us as the avoidance is to take on a long hug consistently as a practice. Long for me, I would suggest 30 seconds. Get into a hugging embrace for 30 seconds and just hug it out. Try to be as present as possible. Try to experience your partner's body. Try to connect with their heartbeat, right? Maybe have a laugh or just simply stay silent and in the moment. But what we're doing here as we sit with that discomfort, we'll probably start pretty quickly. I would bargain somewhere around the 10-second mark. When you stay with the discomfort, right, it doesn't mean that you're doing something wrong. It doesn't need to feel loving. It doesn't need to feel incredibly intimate. What we're doing is simply telling our system, hey, we're safe here. I know this is uncomfortable. I know this is really close. I know this is really intimate. And we're going to stay just for a little bit longer. I can do anything for 30 seconds. So I'm going to stay here and I'm going to build my tolerance for closeness. I know I'm strong enough for this. And as we do that, again, we develop our system to be able to hold more closeness. We can also do the same thing through long kisses. Like 6-second kisses is the Gottman suggestion. If we can longer kiss, that actually will lead potentially to some fun, but also for more connection, more closeness, right? Because it stays with the moment. It tells our body, we're good here. It's okay. We don't need to do what we've always done. We can do this differently now. So physical proximity or physical development, nervous system development, can help us get there. All of this is going to encompass itself into the same formula because all of it's necessary. So naming it to taming it is a very head down or top down method. Hugging it out is more of a bottom up combined with a lot of cognitive thoughts. And then there is also an opportunity to build tolerance separately from our partner. Now, I'm a huge believer that healing is relational. So while I'm going to suggest some skills to develop outside of the relational dynamic, I encourage you to lean into as often as possible the opportunity available to you through relationship healing. Being witnessed in your struggle for closeness is infinitely more powerful for your healing journey than it is for you to witness yourself in the mirror. Because there's a power that comes with this person-to-person interaction where this is your safe person and they're witnessing you without judgment, without shame, without rejection, without abandonment. They're reminding you that this is safe for you to feel this, and they also want to know more about it. is a different experience for an avoidant. And so when that's welcomed and invited and engaged with, it actually helps heal that part of you that may actually have more power to create longer lasting and more effective change than it does for some of these other practices. I'm going to leave that tidbit there because I'm a huge believer in that. It's why I do my work the way that I do. And it's also why I prefer couples coaching over individual coaching, because we actually get to witness each other in our healing, which is infinitely more impactful. This practices, though, can still be done separately in an effort to help the relational healing, to make it more productive, more effective, and so on. So, really simple examples for developing tolerance for discomfort. That's ultimately what we're having a difficult time with, right? So, what we can do is do it more intentionally. So, I'm a big fan of cold showers, but I don't want to invite in just the idea of a cold shower. My suggestion is to take on something like a cold shower or a cold plunge with the intention of reminding ourselves that this is similar to the experience we have when we get too close, and then reminding ourselves that it's safe to feel this way and we have the capacity to hold it. So, getting in the cold shower, getting in the cold plunge, or holding your breath, right? Doing a couple deep breaths and then holding that breath full for a minute, 90 seconds, 2 minutes, pushing your capacity while telling yourself, I am safe in closeness. I am available for closeness. It's safe to be close. I can trust closeness. In this moment, I'm building my tolerance for safety in closeness and connection. We just do it intentionally. We don't throw ourselves in cold water and say, yeah, discomfort. We say, yes, discomfort, mimicking difficult scenarios we find ourselves in. My hope is that this cold plunge or this cold shower helps me develop the skill to be close in my relationship. We're making a direct connection there. So our system can start to get it. So when we find ourselves in a closeness brigade, when we're having a difficult time holding it, well, we've developed what to do in that moment, which is in a cold shower, you take some deep breaths, or you switch your thoughts up. You focus on something different. You change it up so that you can get through the mud a little bit and stay just a little bit longer. And you develop the capacity to hold that discomfort. A couple other practices you can do through your relationship to help move from avoidant to secure is small, tiny moments of closeness through gestures. So again, we talked about the long hug, the long kiss, little texts throughout the day or once a day. Hey, just want to let you know I miss you. Cool. That can be enough. Done. Hey, just want to let you know I love you. I was thinking about you. That's actually creating closeness, right? So maybe that's where your capacity and development is right now. It's just that. That's where you need to start. That's going to go a long way. I promise you, right? Because you're gesturing to your partner, I'm in this. I love you. I'm willing to take this work on, in an effort to build more security, more safety, more stability, more long-term success together. Hey, it hurt me when you said this is a vulnerable position, but brings your partner closer into your world. That can be difficult for an avoidant. Right now, I actually do want closeness, right? Acknowledging that it's not always distance you want. There are moments where you want closeness, but that can be vulnerable because it might be too close. But when we acknowledge, hey, I want closeness right now, again, that's acknowledging that this space is for me. There are times where I want this. I'm not only ever avoidant here. I love you. I like this. Let's be a little close for a little bit here. And then you get to see where your edge is and you can build tolerance from there. Another one that I love because I've practiced this myself is, hey, right now I don't want to be physically close, but I really don't want to be anywhere else but right beside you. After having long, deep conversations with my partner and connecting around our attachment styles and connecting around expressing our needs and what we're looking for in each moment, this was one example that came up where we had a difficult time at first with it. But once we started to work on not taking things so personally and recognizing that as I honor my partner's needs, it actually helps the relationship immensely, then in these kinds of moments, I'm uncomfortable, or I'm at max capacity for the day, or I just want to just be hunkered down without any sort of physical connection, but I don't want to be anywhere beside right next to you. I want to be nowhere else in the world but right next to you because I love you. Just right now, the physical closeness is not something I have capacity for. And acknowledging that with her, with my partner, has been incredible because I get to be witness and honored in my need. She understands that this is where I'm at right now, which connects us. And then as I'm separate a little bit, and because I've named it, it actually usually isn't too long after that where now I want closeness, physical closeness, because I've named it, right? I've acknowledged my need. I've said I'm not going to hide my needs anymore, and I'm not going to withdraw and shut down from them. Let's talk about it. Oh, wait a second. It's actually, it was a different form of development and capacity that I needed to work through. Are you open to closeness now? I know that was confusing. I was just kind of working through it. We create that closeness and that bond on a deeper level when we start to acknowledge those kinds of things. All right, before we finish today's podcast, just a couple reminders. As we move from avoidant to secure, what we're learning to do is be interdependent instead of just strictly independent. We're learning to rely on our partner in effective and productive ways. We're learning to heal through our partner. We're learning to communicate instead of withdraw. And we're learning that closeness is safe. Intimacy is safe. And in order to do that, we need to develop the skill, develop the capacity, the tolerance to hold the discomfort that we feel based on our past experiences, based on what we were taught was safe growing up, based on how we developed growing up. We're learning to acknowledge all of that and say, I also now want something different. I want deeper love. I want deeper sex. I want deeper connection. I want deeper intimacy, closeness, fill in the blank. I want more here. And a lot of what we struggle with in a relationship is the knowing that we want more, but just not knowing how to get there, not having the development yet to get there, and being frustrated by that, being angry by that, sometimes not even knowing what is going on. And so that's what attachment styles help us do. That's what they've helped me do. It's what they've helped Gabby do. It's what they've helped our relationship do, is they help us name it, to tame it, to evolve through it. That's the episode for today on avoidant attachment style. I appreciate you listening. These attachment style conversations are longer because they are so full. What we're working through is a lot of challenge and a lot of difficulty, and they are being given more air. And I'm taking the space to expand on them beyond the 20, 30-minute conversations that I prefer to have on here, specifically because I know how powerful they are. And I also know how intricate they are. They're complex. Like almost everything in relationships, they are a continuum. They're not a binary. And so when I say you're anxious, or you say you're avoidant, or you say you're secure, again, there's a spectrum to all of this. There's a continuum to all of this. You may be slightly anxious, but not as intensely as others. You may be really avoidant beyond what maybe other people are. And you may actually be a combination of the two. You may be a in between, where you're fearful avoidant, where you really crave intimacy, but it makes you deeply uncomfortable. Right? There's different levels to this and different aspects of the spectrum, the continuum, that matter. And so when we talk about any of these behaviors, we talk about them from the sense of possibility, not guarantee. We talk about them from an open, curious standpoint, not a closed-minded labeling mindset. Right? We're staying open to the conversation of what could be alive for me, what language could I be provided to help name it, to tame it. And then if this is something that I'm used to, if this is something that I involve myself in, or this is the system that I resonate with, great. Like, at least there's steps for me beyond that to actually do something about it. There's solutions here. There's next steps. But without getting clear on maybe what the language could be or what the behavior looks like, it's really difficult for us to have a starting point. So simply view this as not seeing the whole staircase, but being willing to take the first step. It's an annoying quote, but it's true, right? You don't know what it's like yet to have the capacity to hold closeness if you're avoidant. And so what we're doing here is saying, I know you don't know what it's like up there, but what I'm telling you is there's safety, security, stability, connection, desire, more of. And right now, there's a lot of scarcity in a lot of those areas. And so if you want, or you have a craving, or you desire to get there, then I am inviting you to simply take that first step, even though you can't see the whole staircase, and see where it goes. Thanks again for listening. Thanks for joining us today on this podcast. This has been another chapter, another page on your relationship atlas. If you found value in this today, please make sure you like, you subscribe, you share, give me a rating. Let me know what your thoughts are. Are you anxious? Are you avoidant? Are you secure? What stands out to you in some of these little pockets? And do you have any questions? Do you want to take it deeper? If you want to take it even deeper, this is the work that I do. Attachment styles are a fundamental core of what I do with my clients. It's what helps us shift from anxious or avoidant or a combination to secure so that we can feel secure and safe and stable and know that whatever comes next for us is available to us. But if we're stuck in patterns, if we're stuck in a dance or we keep tripping over each other and we just keep looping around, we're not going to be able to open ourselves up to feeling safe, secure, stable in the next steps, like marriage, kids, long term, so on. We're not going to feel open and engaged in that. And so that's the work that I help my clients do through the power of attachment theory. So if that interests you, please reach out to me. I'd love to be support line for you in any way that I can. I offer multiple different styles of programs, from a 4-week rapid acceleration program where we talk about realigning your relationship. Maybe things are going pretty well, but you know there's more alignment available. We work through some of that, and attachment styles is a part of that. There's also the relationship revival, where for some of us, we're really just going through it. It's not going well, but we know we're in it to win it. And so what do? That's a 3-month program where we get deeper and we start to allow a little bit more time for change, for growth, for opportunity. And then there's the the full relationship reset, which is essentially reviving it from the ground up. Right? You're either on the brink of breaking up, or maybe you already have, and now you've both agreed, okay, maybe we should give this one more try. Right? You're committed to trying to figure it out, but you're really just at max capacity, and you just feel like this may not be it for you. But part of you says, okay, let's give this a go. That's a different form of structure where we set up a 6-month container together, where we really just start over. We start from scratch. We start from experience as well, to be able to rebuild everything that you have together. So if any of those 3 programs interest you, I'd love to take part in your journey. I also offer individual sessions for those quick cleanups. I call them the relationship reassurance, which is whenever you want, whenever you need them, but ideally once a month. We do a 90-minute session together, and we rip through any sort of unknown possibilities in the future. We rip through some struggles you're currently having that are minor, but you're just trying to clean things up. Basically, you're looking to stay safe, secure, and stable long term. And every month you appreciate a tune up for about 90 minutes together. And then lastly, I also offer one-on-one coaching that includes relationships, but is also a form of life coaching where we actually get into the nitty-gritty of your circle of life, not just relationships, but relationship is simply one spoke of the tire, the circle that we work on. So we work through limiting beliefs, we work through mindset work, we work through embodiment, we work through relationships, finance, friendships, family. We work through your wheel of life to be able to overall have a better sense of well-being in your life. So all of these are the things that I offer my clients. These are what I'm currently working on in different capacities right now. And I would love to be able to support you in any way that I can. So if you're ready to take the next step, email me atlasmecca@gmail.com, or head over to my socials at the relationship coach _ and DM me, or simply click the link in my bio and book something in with me. It's a free session. It's basically going to be a coaching call where I'm going to directly support you immediately. I'm going to provide as much value as possible in that session. And then we're going to go through the logistics of seeing if this is the right container for you. Really looking forward to chatting with you on those containers. Thanks again for listening. We'll see you in the next episode.